We'll call to order the March meeting of the Community Development, Housing, and General Government Committee. We will take items from the consent agenda first, and then we will move to the general agenda. Are there items that members of the committee or council member present would like to be pulled from the consent agenda?
C2.
C2. Any other items? Do have advised by staff that there are individuals present for property located at 852 North Cameron Avenue, property located at 2857 Reynolds Park Road, and property located at 2633 Peachtree Street. Are there anybody else here for properties that have not been, that I did not mention just now?
852 is me.
Okay, so, okay, all right. In Reynolds Park Road? Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
That's C6, 10, and 11.
Okay. One last time, anybody else present for any other properties not mentioned? Is there a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay. Motion to approve.
The balance.
Okay. We gotta do that.
I don't see it.
You got it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not voting. Huh?
You're not.
He's not one of us.
One of them.
Well, we'll approve the balance of the consent agenda, holding items C2, 6, 10, and 11 for consideration. All right. Let us go to item C2. Item C2.
Item C2, resolution adopting. Wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Item C2, resolution adopting the City of Winston-Salem's legislative priorities for the 2018 legislative session.
All right, Mr. Clark, you asked for this.
Yeah, I had, there are 3 items listed, and I don't know if I should address this to, I guess, Ms. Carmen. First one had to do with the city selling real property for the purpose of increasing the supply of affordable housing. Can you comment on that? I mean, is this empty land, houses, and how much do we have? I can't imagine us having a lot.
We don't have very many pieces of residential properties. We have vacant lots of properties with houses on them, not very many of those. I guess based upon a discussion last year, it appeared that there was an interest in trying to be creative to find ways to provide affordable housing. And so looking at the statutes, I thought perhaps this might be an opportunity to allow council to dispose of those houses, the few that we do have at this point in time, under pretty simple means, with council deciding pretty much the value and what to sell those properties for. So it provides a little bit more authority than you currently have, and the ability to dispose of those properties for that purpose without so many restrictions.
Okay.
And Mr. Clark, if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Carmen, this derived from the conversation where we held that item in reference to the sale. Mr. Clark, we had and we ended up going forward because we didn't have it out on the market for home ownership, and how can we find opportunities to increase that affordable housing through home ownership and others. This would be a tool that we could use to help make that happen.
Came about as a result of that conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm really more curious, do we have many? Because I don't think we should be accumulating empty houses.
We don't have many.
Second one on number 3, which is on the second page, the Charter Setting Up Small Business Enterprise Program. Can you just comment a little bit on that, what we have in mind there?
Again, this is just another tool in a toolbox. Fayetteville and I think Durham have this legislation already. It just allows the city to set up a small business program based upon the city's own definition of small business, and provide city contacts through the program that it has devised pursuant to this legislation. So it allows it to, the city to help small businesses.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. McIntyre?
I want to go back to the previous one. Is there any mechanism to determine value through appraisal or anything prior to the sale of one of these pieces of property, or is it just council approved?
It's up to whatever the council wants to put in place in terms of the
Second.
Second.
Hold on. No.
Hang on a minute. I don't,
Nope.
It's gonna be a long meeting.
I thought about that too.
that satellite must be way up there today. I don't have anything.
Let's see it.
And you all know that we do have our meeting scheduled for delegation on April 13th at 8 o'clock. Let us know if you have an after.
April 13th at 8 o'clock, where at?
Public Works Conference Room.
Okay.
Friday the 13th.
Maybe we just need to revote. Yeah,
Okay.
it's okay.
We
Be
just
here.
vote.
So we're going to do it the old-fashioned way?
Yeah.
All right. All right. There it has been moved by Councilmember Clark, seconded by Councilmember Adams, to move this item forward. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That's unanimous. Moving on to item C6. Item C6.
Item C6, Louis P. Gregory, 852 North Cameron Avenue.
Good afternoon. First, I'd like to describe what I've passed out. The audience, of course, has the agenda, but what we're trying new for the council members and everyone to see more clearly, this is our trial run of seeing sort of a dashboard view of all the cases on one sheet. And what this shows basically is the due diligence that we've done on one sheet. So for this particular case of Mr. Gregory, he gives the address, the estimate for the cost of repair, the fair market value, the ward location. If a VDA was mailed, we started that process in 2017 when the committee here and the council gave us approval to send out cases that were in the -50 category, an opportunity to sign a demolition agreement that would give them 4 months versus the standard 90 days after council approval. It also shows there's 2 columns that shows when mail was received by the owner or the owner's representative. So you'll see that column highlighted with the information in blue. The residential compliance and notice of hearing letter is the first letter that we send out, and that's going to be the acronym RNOH. On some of the cases that you'll see tonight, you'll see where the date represents where someone signed for that particular notice from us. And then the next column that just says mail return is when the mail just went unclaimed and no one picked the mail up. There's also a publication column in case we have published the properties and advertised them in the local newspaper. And then if the customers have contacted us prior to this meeting, there's a column that says customer communication. Mr. Gregory did contact us on March 7th and indicated that he would like to be heard at this meeting.
Did you have anything else on that property to show?
I can show a photograph of the picture.
I was just doing that just for the record, on those, notices that were unclaimed. So the statute and the city code allow properties to be posted with the notice. So we may think about adding that stated posted.
Okay.
And the pictures show that, by the way.
Okay. Mr. Gregory, if you step to the podium. If you step to the podium and give your name and address for the record.
Your pardon me, sir. I'm trying to recover from a pacemaker 2 weeks ago. This house here.
Well, before you start, can you give your name and address for the
Louis
record?
Phil Gregory Jr.
Mm-hmm.
My home address is 3824 Forest Valley Drive in the city of Winston-Salem. This house here, I'll admit I've worked on this house, and the value of this house is still good. The only problem is that the raccoon on the looking at the house on the left has pulled out one piece of soffit, and the rest of it, the two windows on the front. The house next door has been rented to people who have continued to bust out my windows. I repaired those windows on the front, and I put rapid wire over the windows to catch the rocks where they were breaking out. That was 2 years ago. And right now, the only window that's broken there is one storm panel on the left side of the house that's owned by one of the city councilmen. And there's no real reason. There's nothing wrong with the house. Only a dumb person who don't know housing would say it's unfit. How can you take a repair? If I paid somebody to do that repair, I can go in and have my son. I can't do it now because of my surgery, but I can go in and I can fix that. It takes less than a day to do that little bit of repair. You know, and even then, there's a sign that says no trespassing, but still, it's all right for the city inspector to just walk up there and tack on the door with paper right there. They don't care, you know. And when Miss Burke unveiled a Reynolds plat on Cameron Avenue, the city sent a crew in there and cut my shrubbery without my permission. They trespassed when they did that. It's okay if the city do, and they're wrong. They should never went on my property and cut my. It didn't need to be cut.
Mr. Gregory?
I wanted to look good, you know, for the occasion.
Mr. Gregory,
Yes, sir.
the violations that are listed that we're looking at include reglazing windows, paint or treat exterior wood with protective coating, repair soffit or fascia, repair or replace screens on door, repair or replace screens on windows, replace broken window panes. The items that are listed here, if those items are addressed and dealt with, it gives the ability for this property to no longer be listed. So what we would need to understand is the timing for you to be able to handle that. So if we approve this item today, it will have, what's the time frame of if we move forward with the item? Somebody tell me. Well, hold a second. I want to get the response from staff real quick. The approval of this process. Right, 90 days in sign of VDA, but if we approve. Well, hold on a second. I'm trying to help you. So hold on a second. So 90 days with the VDA. If we approve it as it is.
If you approve it as it is, it's 90 days to get it on the ordinance and the council adoption of the ordinance. So with the VDA, they get an extra 30 days.
120.
Okay. So, Mr. Gregory, if you believe that you're able to address these issues within 90 day within the 90-day time frame, it would be advantageous of you to sign the VDA, which you pretty much affirm and say, I'm going to take care of these things within this time frame, and if I fail to do that, then you can move forward with your demolition act.
I'd like to sign the VDA for
But-
simple reason, and if you can clarify me 100% and explain that, where I won't be put in a trick. Otherwise, I still got 90 days, right?
Right. But the thing.
Why should I sign away my life to the city, and I still got 90 days?
Well, you get.
Why should you try to take advantage of a taxpayer?
Well, it is not taking advantage of a taxpayer. It actually is a swifter way to deal with what's out there. So, well,
I think you should be more considerate in trying to help people in the area instead of trying to hurt them.
right, and that's why we're here to have this conversation. So if we weren't, we could just approve this and move forward and not even have the conversation. But that's not what we want to do, Mr. Gregory. Hold on. So if what I'm hearing you say is you'd rather just take the 90 days that's out there and deal with whatever comes along with it. I don't know if that's the best decision to make in reference to this, but you're the property owner.
Have you looked at this list?
I just read it to you.
Have you looked at this list?
So,
Do you think it would take 90 days to get this done?
what we
To have some knowledge.
we're you're misunderstanding. You're not. I don't think you're understanding, and so we're not going to have any more conversation.
And I'm wearing hearing aids too, so I may not get every little word you're saying.
Right. So what I'm saying is that if we approve the item today as is, if you don't sign the VDA, what it means is after 90 days, once we go through our process, they can come and tear the house down if you haven't done what needs to be done. If you sign the, well, let me finish. If you sign the VDA, you will engage with the staff. They'll work with you. I promise the staff will work with you. They'll work with you in terms of timing to get the work done. If you think you can get this done in 20 days or less, which I agree with you, the issues here shouldn't take 90 days if you have somebody to do the work. But the VDA helps you.
Like I said, on the 28th of February, it went into my heart for the pacemaker. Okay? My life is more valuable than you putting pressure on me. I'll get it done. I'll get somebody to do what needs to be done. Now, the unfit, I would say, but as far as the minor don't have to be done.
So,
Are we in agreement on that?
not necessarily, but what we can do, I can't give you, I'll let the staff give you a yes or no answer in terms of whether or not what has to be completed.
I understand Mr. Brooks gone now. Thank the Lord. That was our biggest problem. It was the city's big problem.
Mr. Gregory, so we're going to move on, but what I'm going to ask, and I'm going to make the motion that we move forward with the action as it is, but I'm going to ask that you work with Mr. Gregory. Mr. Gregory, I'll be willing to reach out to you personally to make sure we follow up with you to set a time, because what happens if you do the work, you have to make sure you call the city back and say, hey, the work's done, come back out and check it.
I'll get the work done. I won't be able to do it. I'll get the work done within 90 days.
Okay.
You know, with the pacemaker, right now, I got to go back down to the VA in Durham, and on the 27th of this month, for a re-checkup on this pacemaker. It's been a great implant, been painless. It has restricted me. You know, I can't deal with electronics too much. But I think at 81 years old and almost 82, I consider myself blessed. And this is minor. It's no problem getting this done. I mean,
Okay.
Half of a taxpayer. Give me a break. I'll do it.
All right, we're going to work with you to get it done. So with that, I make a motion to approve the item as it is, given the 90 days as exists with this approval. Is there a second?
Second.
It's fixed now?
It's fixed now.
All right, what's fixed?
The motion.
Oh, I thought she fixed the house. I don't know what's going on.
All right. So if somebody on staff could get with Mr. Gregory, if Mr. Gregory, you'll see Mr. Bailiff right there in the back.
Come on, Bruce.
Yeah, Bruce.
I've been down that old man for what, 30 years, I guess.
All right, if you'll get with him, he'll work with you, okay? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. You too.
You too.
Okay, we got it.
All right. Item C10.
Item C10, 2857 Renota Park Road.
This property is owned by Adinelli Rosa Nogueira. The due process was followed with the notice of hearing, the finding of order, and of course we have arrived at the committee meeting today. The property is in the -50 category. It is repairable. The fair market value is $20,000, and the repair to the structure we estimate at $5,573.
Okay.
The customers are here to speak on their own behalf.
Okay. If you come to the podium and give your name and address for the record.
My name is Adi Nelly Sosa Noguera. The number, okay?
The address.
The address. 2857 Reynolds Park Road, Winston-Salem. 27107, that's it.
Okay. And so with this property, it is presented to us today because it's in violation. What is your intentions to deal with the unfit issues?
Okay, I'm sorry, my English is
We don't have
is bad.
a translator.
Okay. Do we have somebody that?
We're checking.
Okay.
We're
Yeah.
checking to see if we can find it.
Yep.
I can't. I don't know. I don't know.
Well,
I'm
when we-
probably. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. We're going to get someone to assist. If the committee would allow us to table this one and come back once we have someone
Yeah.
to come. So yeah, if you take a seat, we'll come right back. We'll come back to you. Item C11.
Item C11, 2633 Peachtree Street.
The property owner for this case is Sharon Craver. The due process was followed with the notice of hearing, followed by the finding of the order. The property is in the minus 50% category. $1,762 is the amount of the repair, is the repair estimate for the property, and the fair market value is $15,000. Again, I refer you back to the summary consent agenda sheet that you have in front of you, not only for this case, but all of the cases from there moving forward. We'll probably do this so we can show you when the notice of hearings were mailed and when they were signed by the person that we mailed it to or their representative, when mail was returned, and of course when if we needed to, performed a publication or entered a publication with the newspaper. And we have photographs from today. The customer's husband is here and would like to speak on her behalf.
Okay. If you'll give your name and address for the record.
Randy Craver, 1422 Reedy Creek Road, Lexington, North Carolina. Well, here about 2 years ago, I got a thing. I went and fixed what they wanted fixed, and was supposedly okayed. I called up here the other day about trash being picked up. I need to ask about too while I'm here, because they bad about leaving trash on the walkway out front. I went and picked it up I don't know how many times, and also in the road. They'll put it out in the road, but they always say it's my problem to get it up, even though it's on the road. But anyway, I redone the repairs, and then I called the other day about I couldn't come when I got a ladder and mail. Couldn't come up here to get them done. So I called and got it put off for extension. They give it to me. So I come and got them. And then when I called to get the extension, I was talking to the lady, and she said, well, there's something open on this thing, because I didn't have the address. I mean, I had the address with me, but didn't have the case number. And she said, this is over 2 years old. Well, I had done the repairs 2 years ago, and then I got a letter in mail last week about this. And I don't understand what the issue is, really. Because if you look, the house looks better than the houses around it. I mean, the house beside it, I took some pictures yesterday of some things, and the houses around it looks, I don't know. I mean, I'm planning on redoing the house, but it's gonna be 6, 8 months before I can get to do what I wanna do to it, or I'm gonna sell it. I just ain't decided which way I wanna go. But you see what the house looks like, so that's the situation.
Mr. Clark?
We have in front of us, and hopefully you have, is a list of the violations. And these may be a year and a half old. I don't know how old they are.
Well, no, them was fixed.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering if we just need to maybe
I fixed
re-inspect
the
the
front
house.
porch and stuff they wanted fixed. I went and fixed every bit of it. And the man that was, Mr. Green's on that route now, and there was Harold, I got his name at the office. Harold Russell, was that? Might be it. And he's the one that approved it, but I didn't get nothing in mail. I called him. He said everything looked good. Real nice guy. And then I got this in mail, but according to what she told me, this has been 2 years ago. This was wrote. But that was the repairs that I done 2 years ago. I don't quite understand, really.
So
He's saying something about, the inside of the house. What's that got to do with the outside?
with the repairs, as I mentioned with the gentleman before, that with repairs, you have to call and ensure that there is an inspection done
They
and that
did.
they're
I made
checked
him
off.
there.
And so if that's the case, what we're looking at now are items that are unfit. And the pictures that we see here today, at least the one that you can see clearly is the fascia boards and soffits.
They pulled that down recently.
That are,
But that wasn't on the repair order 2 years ago because it was all fixed.
but it's on this repair order.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is, what did 2 years ago got to do with now? That was my issue because I had it all done and approved. I mean, I'm going to fix it, but it's just a matter of getting to it. I got so much going on.
When do you think you'll be able to get the unfits?
Well, when I started on, I wanted to redo the whole house, to be honest with you, and it'll probably be 6, 8 months till I get to it. Because I got 2 houses under construction I'm trying to do now.
Council member of that area isn't here, but I will look to committee.
I mean, you see what the house looks like. I mean, it ain't no house you'd tear down.
I was going to suggest that we re-inspect it. Can we do that and see if any of these have been cleared up?
We can re-inspect.
We can
Now,
hold it in
the
committee.
stuff
Let's
that's on this
re-inspect it.
list now, that the new list I got, ain't the stuff that was fixed to start with. That wasn't the list I had.
Well, if we re-inspect it, we'll have a up-to-date list, and we can go from there.
Well, now, some of the vinyl siding on the back, they have throwed off of it. But the siding and all's in the house. All the windows are in the house. Actually, the house beside of it, the windows about out of it. And the houses around it. I mean, this house looks better than, I could ride around and bring you about 30 houses. This house looks a lot better than them,
Okay.
And I am going to fix it. It's just a matter of when I get to it.
All right.
Or I'm going to sell it one.
Okay. What has been a recommendation from one of the members on the committee is to hold this in committee and allow staff to go back and re-inspect. What that will mean is that there'll be no, if the committee agrees, there'll be no decision made on this property. It will come back to this committee in April for additional consideration of what we'll do moving forward with that. I would advise in between that time to have some conversation, particularly with the council member of that area, which is Councilmember Taylor, who may also have some other thoughts on how we can move forward with this property. And so, again, the recommendation has been hold this in committee, allow staff to come back out and re-inspect, and I'll specifically ask the staff engages you to make sure that you understand exactly what may or may not be on that list. With that being said, is there a formal motion to be made? Or
Yeah, just we'll do the informal, it's fine. Just
Is
hold
there-
in
there's
committee-
not objection?
Hold a committee, re-inspect, and they'll send you the new report, and we can go from
okay.
Okay, and you said for me to get in touch with who now?
Council member James Taylor, who this property is in the southeast ward, and so
Darrell? Well, I thought Darrell was who I thought it was. Darrell.
there. This is the elected official, he's not in the inspection.
yeah. I think you're referencing the inspector.
His name ain't on here.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
I guess.
We'll give you the
Yeah,
name.
staff will make sure you have the contact
Okay,
information.
and now I want to ask you why I'm here about the trash. I mean, there's a lot of drug dealing going on this street.
That may be, again,
I was up there yesterday and seen 2 drug deals go down, and it's called the law about it. Nothing happened, and they don't do nothing across in front of it. But have parties and barbecues and.
That's
I mean,
another
it's bad.
conversation I think that the council member will be very, very open to having, to work.
I mean, it's really bad. It needs to be something done. Well, now, let me ask you, what do I do about the trash that's in the road? Am I responsible for what's in the road as well? If it's on the side of the street and in the road,
Yeah, so,
it's my problem. Is that what y'all saying?
I will simply say, at my house, if there's any trash in the road or in my front yard, I pick it up immediately.
Well,
Because it's my house and I take pride in it. Now, I know you don't live here.
I do the same at my house.
Yeah.
But the people across in front of this house is the ones bringing all this over there and dumping it. And I have proved to them 2 or 3 times, but nothing ever happens. That's my issue. By the way, I even call for the trash busters
Yeah.
or something. I mean, y'all, you wouldn't have no idea how much trouble I've had out of it.
right.
I got a man beside of it that lives that calls me and lets me know when there's a problem.
Staff will be more than happy to continue the conversation and dialogue with you in reference to that. One of the greatest ways to be able to keep from that is to have occupied properties in neighborhoods. They don't do that in front of some of the occupied properties. So
Yeah.
we appreciate you, and staff will get with you to give you that information.
All right.
All right.
Thank y'all.
Thank you very much. All right.
We go to back to C10.
Yep.
Here we go.
Come back to item C10 now. Yep. Yeah. All right. And so, in essence, we asked what her intentions were with the property and repairs.
Le vamos a preguntar cuáles son sus intenciones con la propiedad y para la reparación.
Pues mi intención es reparar la casa.
My intention is to repair the house.
No he podido terminarla pues porque no he tenido el dinero para terminarla.
Have not been able to finish because I don't have the money to do that.
Pero ya le he cambiado el techo.
But I already fixed the roof.
Adentro le he cambiado de madera y cosas.
Inside, I have been replacing boards.
Yo me estaba enfocando más adentro que afuera, pero
I've been concentrating on the inside rather than on the outside of the house.
pero ahorita yo pues mi trabajo es limpieza y en invierno yo casi no tengo trabajo.
But I work as custodian, not custodian, doing cleaning, and during the winter I barely work.
Vivo en otra casa rentada, pues tengo gastos, entonces
I live in another house that I rent from a landlord, so I have expenses.
y tengo que repartir mis gastos tanto para
So-
hacer las reparaciones como los gastos que
So
pago
I
en
have to
casa.
divide my money to my expenses in the house where I live and to repair this other house.
And so, from a timing standpoint, what's a timeline of potential repair?
¿Cuál es el tiempo en que usted tardaría en hacer estas reparaciones?
Voy a tratar de hacer las reparaciones que me está diciendo en la lista lo más pronto que yo pueda.
I'll
El
try to
tiempo-
make these repairs that are in the list as soon as I can.
Pero el tiempo no lo sé. Voy a tratar
But I
de
am not sure about the
avanzar
time.
en esta lista.
I will try to do as quick as I can.
Where's this property?
¿Dónde está la
Reynolds
propiedad?
Park.
57 bueno.
Southward.
Southeast.
Southeast, excuse me.
Um,
Wait a minute.
I think I could speak well from a committee and council standpoint that we never want to engage in action when we have folks who are actively working on properties. The best thing is when we can have a property owner who's trying to do something. Is this property to live to? Is she just going to live in this house?
¿Usted va a vivir en esta casa una vez que sea reparada? Yes,
Yeah.
I'm attempting to do so.
Yeah. And with that,
If I may suggest, why don't we hold this in committee and give her a chance to check with staff and potentially with Councilmember Taylor?
okay. Yeah. We'll hold this in committee and allow for some more conversation to happen. Marla?
And
So
we
when-
also offered a VDA, and we also suggested that as she makes progress, staff will work with her such that even at the expiration of the 120 days, if she's made substantial progress, we'll work with her to give her more time to make those repairs. And we did express to her that our desire is to keep homes, not take them down. So we have communicated that we will work with her to take care of it.
Okay. But I think it would be good just to just to hold it, and allow for some more engagement. Okay? So we won't take action on this item today, but it will come back next month for consideration, and ask that we have some more conversation with the staff in between time. Okay? All right. So without objection, we'll hold this item in committee until our April meeting. All right. With that said, let us move to item G1.
Item G1, consideration of items concerning amending the City of Winston-Salem's Minority and Women-Owned Enterprise Program Plan.
Good evening, Chairman Montgomery and members of the committee. So this item was one that was brought to you for information last month. And so again, just as a brief reminder, the city every so often, the staff tries to seek out ways to improve our MWBE program and make enhancements to strengthen the program. And so we have done that. And what you have before you is a revised MWBE program plan for the city. You have that policy, the full, I think 18 or so pages of it is in your documents. There is a little exhibit that kind of highlights some of the key changes that we've made to the policy. But what we're asking for is your approval for the implementation of this new policy. So if you have any questions, happy to answer those.
Questions from members of the committee? Councilman Clark?
I'm on Exhibit A, page 101. The first one is fairly self-explanatory. We're going down from 300,000 to 100,000 on construction projects, which you know is fine. More of my questions are in the professional area. For example, we have a contract with an accounting firm to audit our books. I know I sit on the police retirement board. We have a contract for actuarial services to calculate up, do we have enough money in the plan and things of that sort. And I would think it would be difficult for those people to subcontract out because they're legally stating, particularly a CPA is going to state that, and put their license at state that the books do or do not meet and whatever words they come up with. So my question generally there for services, what do we do if they don't contract services out or subcontract?
Sure. Just recognize Taisha Hinton. She's our MWBE manager and can answer that for you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So to your question, Councilmember Clark, if you have a firm that does not typically subcontract elements of work, they can still either obtain 20% of that evaluation by being an MWBE themselves or making a good faith effort to subcontract with MWBE firms. So there's 3 ways for them to obtain the 20% criteria.
Okay, I still have a question. The actuarial firm we use for the police retirement is a very specialized field. I think they come out of Baltimore, I believe, is where they come from. And I just don't know if it would be appropriate for them to subcontract out anything. Now, they may have minority folks, women that work with them.
Sure.
I don't know. Matter of fact, we used to use a female-owned accounting firm. We don't anymore. But I'm just troubled with the professional services because some of it is not appropriate.
Sure.
Or let's say we're getting ready to do some street scraping. Aren't we going to do some artistic work? I mean, you're going to have the artist subcontract out part of the painting?
Yes. So a part of the evaluation criteria, that 100%, there are other factors that can be made up. So if your firm, for example, if one of the preferences are experience on past projects, they would score high there. But if they do not meet one of those 3 criteria just stated, they would not obtain that 20% for MWB participation.
You know, I still have concerns in certain areas, particularly in professional services. It's like going to the doctor and he said, well, you know, I can't give you the shot. Let me go down the street and get the shot and come back. I just think from a sphere of control that certain professional, and I'm thinking more professional services, that it would not be appropriate just to walk down the street and get somebody else to do part of it. I mean, there's pictures in the new convention center. I mean, do we say, okay, artists, you go get somebody to paint this corner and you paint the rest of it? I mean, I can understand on other things like a building where you have dozens of trades, that's a little easier, but professional services, We contract out with Alex Brown, which is part of Raymond James, to oversee our investment on the police retirement area. Now, they use underneath them, they recommend, and the city actually hires actual money managers. Now, they are a variety of folks down there. But as far as Alex Brown, they basically sit in their office and come up with investment strategies that they recommend to us. But I can't imagine how they would sub any of that.
And that's still a possibility. But the way that their criteria works is that, in your example, they may not have any MWBE firms to subcontract, but they still may fare well in the other evaluation criteria areas. It would not prevent them from obtaining the contract.
Well, I'll just say, I think there ought to be better language in here for specific professional services which are not typically subbed. But I would have a hard time if the CPA came in here and says, we did your audits, okay, but we subbed some of it out to somebody in St. Louis. We hope they did a good job. We never heard of them, but that's what they did. As opposed to a construction project where, again, you got lots of opportunities. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Other than that, it looked fine.
Councilman Adams?
Yes. Again, I want to thank staff for helping with this, being able to be visionary in this, knowing that everything is not going to happen the way we would love to see it happen, because if it did, the world we live in wouldn't be the way it is. But again, it goes back, and you guys are going to get tired of me saying this, but if we're not intentionally trying to be diverse and inclusionary, it won't happen. And I hear you, Councilmember Clark, and to some degree, yes, I agree with you, and I think I hope you would know that we know what you're talking about. There are certain businesses or subject matter experts that will not check these boxes. But as they said, hopefully they're going to check the boxes high and all the other things. If we need a plumber and there is no plumber around that's got diversity or inclusion or intentional trying to offer good faith, to go hire some interns or get with somebody with a certified plumber, then we're not going to turn the plumber down and go get I don't know, somebody else, a carpenter, to do the work. Like the man was saying about us a while ago, I don't want to quote it, we're not that quote-unquote dumb. We're not. We understand the world we live in, but we also understand some of the things that we have to do to try to push the envelope. So businesses that have never had diversity, never even thought about it, because they've always done it this way. We're hoping that this
They may well have diversity in their workforce.
They may, but Councilmember Clark, there are some that don't. And that's just the way it's been set up, and that's the way the life of the business has been, and we're understanding to that. We're not mad at them or anything, and we're not going to try to really persecute anybody. We're just saying we got to help change the culture and the mindset as leaders, that they'll look and say, you know what? All of my counterparts have hired some type of diversity in their business, whatever it may be. Latino, Hispanic, LGBTQ, minorities, women, young people, older people, who knows? All we're saying is we need to start helping people think about it as the world we live in, that's all. And this is one of the tools in the toolbox. We're not going to make it where the city hires people that are not experienced and not certified in what they do when it's a requirement. That's a compliance issue. We wouldn't do that. But again, this is a way to try to open up the doors for some others.
Councilmember Larson?
I'm sorry I missed the first briefing at the last meeting, so I'm sort of trying to catch up on some of these things. I understand the 100 down to 100, real clear capital improvements, general contractors, sort of things we talk about. I am trying to understand the complexity of the other parts dealing with professional services, and there seems to be the $20,000 threshold that's applying to this. This is a new provision, and this penetrates all the way down through the city organizations all the way down to the department levels. Anytime they buy a truck or a car or anything that's got to be purchased over $20,000, this rule is going to apply, which means that we're going to have an increased responsibility within this city to for compliance, for monitoring all the expenditures that are being made within this category of now determining a new standard, basically, how we're going to evaluate department heads and how they purchase and what's going to be done. I guess my question ultimately revolves around the cost. Has anybody done a cost analysis? Are we going to be hiring additional staff now in order to deal with these compliance issues and monitoring and the administration of this program? And if so, can anybody tell me what implementation of these recommendations, what it's projected to cost the city to do this?
Let me take that one, Chairman. First of all, Councilmember Larson, this policy doesn't apply to trucks and purchases of equipment. That's by state law. It's low bid. Okay. This policy is for services, so anything from an artist to somebody fixing something for us. It's any service or consultant. We already require all department heads, if they're going to buy anything, including a truck, if they're going to buy anything, and it's going to, if they estimate it's going to exceed or come close to exceeding $20,000, they have to go through purchasing. They can't do it themselves. So that part is already kind of in our work plan. What this adds is more work, yes, for Mr. Raleigh and his staff to review all of these RFPs. It's added more work for me because some other things we're doing now is all requests for proposals or qualifications. Actually, before they go out, I get to go through every single one to make sure that we are being, I think as Councilmember Adams says, intentional. Not just about this. The other thing that we've added, the 20 points or 20% for of the scoring for NWB participation is only one piece. We also require, we give 20% points for distance from job site, which is our nice way of saying local. So you'll have firms who will bid. We're getting ready to bid out financial advisors and for our bonds and all that. And you'll have firms that might get points for being minority owned or subcontracting, or likely just minority owned, but somebody else will get points for being local. And those, it's best to get most points if you meet both goals. But that's the way we're looking at it. As far as the impact on staff, I think it will be more impact, and I think you will see in the next item, if council goes ahead with the disparity study, the recommendations coming out of that within a year, that probably could most likely indicate we need more staff, but that could be a year out.
So, I'm sorry, so we don't anticipate, if we pass this Monday, any additional budget changes in?
Not this year. No. There'll be more work for those of us here, but I think we can get through it this year. But as we look at more things we might do through a disparity study, particularly on the outreach side, and things that we can do to build capacity throughout the community, I think you will probably see some recommendations based on what I've seen in other cities. And Ms. Hinton can back me up on that. There probably will be some recommendations for more staff. Then we have one of the smallest staffs, I think, in the state.
And that is if we were to create additional programs.
Right.
And this does not create additional programs.
We can handle this.
Mr. McIntosh? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Larson, were you done?
I'm done. Thank you.
Mr. McIntosh?
My question was more along the lines of how many projects, and I think I asked this last time, but fall between the $100,000 and $300,000.
I think what our purchasing director told us last time was about a half a dozen. I think he said 12 to 25, something like that.
12 to 25 per year.
Correct.
Construction projects,
correct.
Capital projects. And then on the professional services side, what are we looking at from an impact there? How many?
Right now, we have about 17 that have been advertised and put out.
In the pipeline.
Yeah,
that's as of January.
It's been real labor intensive recently because we pulled everything off the street, and so there's been quite a few that we've changed up already. I erred on the side of moving forward.
So on an annual basis, 30, 40, 50?
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Closer to 40, 50.
And is there a sense that this process will have an impact on cost? The cost of those jobs? Either on the construction side or the...
Well, on the professional services side, I would say when you're talking about engineering, surveying, architecture, price isn't considered in this phase of the process. So that's negotiated with the department, so no. And then on the other services side, there's some of them are still going out to have a bid, and it's still price is considered the way it always is. They're just MWB compliant documents. So on that side, I would say no as well.
Or do our counterparts in other municipalities do this type of thing? And where I'm getting to on this is that we've had a couple of single bid projects, which is just a killer when it comes to paying through the nose. Are we making it more difficult to find contractors to come work here?
I don't believe so. I think in some regard we're kind of playing catch up as far as the compliance and oversight piece, especially on professional services. And there are peer cities who do the same thing. I don't know if their threshold starts at 20, but I think we're being proactive in doing so.
Thank you.
Okay. I just have a couple, just one, thanks staff for continuing to work through this and figure some things out in reference to what we're looking at. One question that I would ask in reference to the $20,000 mark is this on a single contract that we're looking at for some type of services, or is this a cumulative number annually, meaning I may engage Lee Garrity for X services multiple times during the year that adds up to 20,000 or more? And if that's the case, is that captured in this in some way?
It is.
Okay.
So an example would be, is it the art services, where it's over a 3-year period, and so we take the entire amount and apply that 10% goal.
Okay. All right. And then the other is, I think that the question that I asked, they're good questions for us to consider in reference to how we move forward, impacts in different areas. But I think for us to be forward-leaning and forward-thinking in our actions, which in comparative to our peer cities, we're late leaning into this direction in some ways, is that if a contractor doesn't want to come to this community because they don't want to abide by our MWBE policies, then God bless you and find some work in another community, because I don't think these are overly restrictive requests. What I would to make sure that we're able to answer that question in the future is for us to be able to see who's bidding and who's not bidding with these in place, to be able to answer the question, does this impact anyone saying that they won't want to participate in our process because we have too many rules? Do we see a change in the people who are bidding on this and who say that they want to provide services because they simply say that the process is too cumbersome? I think that is something for us to look at in this process, just to make sure we can kind of reflect back and say, well, that's not a problem for us. People still are submitting, still responding, and they're not only responding, but we're being able to meet these goals as well in terms of what we track. So with that,
I move for
and
approval.
there's a motion for approval. Is there a second? We fixed it.
Oh. Sorry.
You're not tied in?
No protest.
No, I am logged in. Yes.
What's
I am.
wrong?
Is there a second?
It's still doing the thing up here.
There's a motion and a second. I would just make one additional comment. I was late yesterday to the finance committee meeting where the contracting services around the marketing and advertising components were discussed and about the fair. Where that discussion was had. And I, for the record, I had a conversation earlier that morning with Mr. Brad Bennett, had breakfast with him and had a cup of coffee with him to talk about it. And I agree in terms of the point of ensuring that what we put on the street, that we set the expectation clear. I think there was a very clear expectation from folks in council on what we were going to expect from individuals. But I think this type of action helps it to be very, very clear in all of our contracting processes what we're expecting from folks when we put things out on the street. I think there was a good concern there that, well, I responded to what you said you wanted from me. But this, I think, puts it out to say, this is what we desire from all the folks who we're spending X amount of dollars with, and I think that goes to abate those kind of concerns in the future. And so I just wanted to say how that impacts some of the things that are happening right now.
And I would just like to add, since you were not there, the person who we did not award the contract to did meet the 10% goal.
That's 3 in favor and 1 abstain. All right, item G2.
Item G2, resolution authorizing the city manager to solicit proposals for a disparity study.
Chairman Montgomery, members of the committee, this is also an item that is a continuation of one that was presented at a previous committee meeting. Just as a quick refresher, this was an item that we did discuss with our MWBE Citizens Advisory Committee. We've had extended conversations with them prior to bringing it to this committee for consideration, and they voted, I think it was their December meeting, 7-1, to recommend to this body to consider commissioning a disparity study. The items that you have in front of you, the memo itself is just a description of what a disparity study is. It gives you some background on that and also some legal explanation about what a disparity study is and what the outcomes of such would mean. There are several attachments to this item, and many of these attachments respond to information that was requested when we last had this conversation at committee several months ago. So you have, firstly, a comparison chart of MWBE disparity studies that have been conducted in peer municipalities, and essentially answers the question of whether we can implement the key recommendations in each of those with or without a disparity study. You also have several executive summaries of the most recent versions of disparity studies that were conducted in our peer municipalities. And then you also have an update on the MWBE program's key work items list. And just as a reminder, the last time, I think this was 2014, when this committee was seriously considering conducting or commissioning a disparity study, it opted not to, but at that time, there were 9 items that essentially were, staff was tasked with implementing or delivering in lieu of that disparity study. And so we've provided you with an update on where we stand with each of those items that staff was directed to undertake at that time. So I will stop there and be happy to answer any questions that you have, and Ms. Hinton will be happy to answer any questions you have about the attachments.
Okay. Are there questions for staff in reference to what we have here? Mr. Clark?
I still struggle with what this thing looks like. I know you got Greensboro in here. If I were to ask you for the executive summary of the the Greensboro study, is that available, and how long is it? It's 100 pages. I can't comprehend that much.
Councilmember Clark,
Who's in here?
It is.
Okay. Well, I'll study that in more detail. I'm still trying to see what I'm going to learn from it that I don't already know.
So essentially what a disparity study should do is look at the utilization or underutilization and the availability of minority and women-owned businesses in a particular area over a specific time frame. So they will say over a 10-year time frame in these 5 counties, how much were MWBEs utilized in the city of Winston-Salem or underutilized in the city of Winston-Salem. Based off of that information, they will recommend key findings or recommendations as to what we can do to address typically the underutilization of those companies, or if they're overutilized, which has happened, in a couple of cases, what we should be doing instead.
Okay. 2 scenarios, and we had one yesterday. I don't remember what it was, but many a time we'll get a list of everyone that got the bid, proposal, whatever. And sometimes there's 10 or 15 minority women-owned businesses and nobody bids. And I don't know if those are companies that maybe that's not quite what they may be under that category on the SIC code, but it may not be really what they do. Or do they still exist, or are they just not interested, or whatever. And I don't know how to work that problem, and I don't know if this study can tell me how to work that problem. We give somebody a bid, ask them to bid, and they don't bid, I struggle with that. The other one is, which I think is a bigger problem, is from a dollar standpoint, most of the contracts we do, and I'm talking about everything. I know y'all tend to work on capital projects, but we spend a lot of money there right now, bond money, but traditionally we don't do as much. But buying cars, trucks, fire trucks, whatever. Most of the time, there are no minority vendors. Software is another big thing. Spend a lot of money on software. I don't know how to address that either, and I don't see how a study is going to help me on either one of those.
Sure.
And the third one is, when people do bid, a state law, unless it's a contract, where we can have subcontract goals, I got to take the low bid. And we'll bid, I can think of, I did have 2 sidewalks put in. They were put in by minority vendors, one out of here and one out of Charlotte. Did a good job, by the way. But when we voted on them, the low bid got it. And I don't know how disparity studies are going to help me if the low bidder wasn't a minority female. And to me, when I study the data we get when we get bids, is I have never seen an instance, I don't believe, where a minority bid and they were the low bidder and didn't get it. Now, there may be once or twice they didn't fill the paperwork out right or something. But for the most part, we do award the contract to the low bidder, and we seem to send the stuff out to all sorts of folks.
Sure.
And those are the type of questions that I struggle with, and I don't know how this study is going to help me there.
Well, I am going to put an asterisk and say with a good consultant, because consultants vary. So with the effective consultant, so I think your first point was when we have a list of MWBE bidders and they don't respond to the solicitation. So in a lot of cases, that's on formal construction projects where MWBEs may not be competing as the prime contractor. So that may be a reason why. But besides that point, what a disparity study should do is have those conversations with the community as to why aren't you bidding? What does your availability look like? The list of bidders that you received and they did not respond, where did they come from? Because if they came from New Bern, North Carolina, and we're in Winston-Salem, that's too far for them to travel.
I understand that.
So it kind of provides that type of background information. They do that through community input sessions, through emails, phone conversations where they kind of get that information. I believe your second point was when we have areas like fire trucks or goods and services that MWBEs don't typically have businesses in, what a disparity study should do is break down those areas. So we'll look at construction and underutilization or overutilization. Well, it should look at goods and services, same thing. It should look at professional services, same thing. So it should break down each of those areas for you so that it's apples to apples. So to your point, if it's fire trucks, which would fall under goods and services, those type of caveats should be addressed. And then your third point was if they're the lowest bidder,
they get it.
And they get the job. Right. So it won't take away lowest responsible bid. But it will say what can you do to increase MWBEs as prime contractors. So does your program help MWBEs compete as primes? Those types of things. But it won't do anything to remove or affect the process of lowest responsible bidder. So that'll stay in place.
We seem to concentrate very heavily on the construction area, and I understand that because there's oodles of subs that go in.
Right.
But we spend an awful lot of money on non-construction stuff, just buying stuff. And that's where I don't know how this study is going to help us do better. I mean, first off, there's only 2 or 3 people in the country that make fire trucks. I understand that. And there's only so many Chevy dealerships that can quote on the Chevy Capri for a police car or whatever we buy. There's only so many people that do certain softwares or make, we had a contract, I think yesterday with Motorola for, cell walkie-talkies, and there's only one Motorola.
Right.
So I'm struggling with, and I will study this in more detail on how this study is going to help us address those issues. Because one of the concerns I have with we just concentrate so much on construction. When we did get sidewalk bids, I probably had 6 or 7 minority vendors bid on it because we've been trading cement folks. We got too many of them.
Right.
And so, I mean, those are just the things I struggle with, and I'll leave it at that, and I will try to study this between now.
And your point's well taken. I will say that availability is something that's also addressed in a disparity study. So what is your availability in particular services versus construction? And they will compare that to the over or underutilization of firms as well. So a disparity study will tell you who's available in a 12-county area to provide consulting services. And if there's no one available, in a particular area, whatever that looks like, and there's no one available, then you can use that data to look at the numbers that they're provided. So it'll kind of, it should weigh it out for you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Best?
Yeah, these are reasonable questions, and they keep coming up, and I'm convinced that we just don't have all the information we need to answer them. And on that basis, I'll move approval of the resolution.
Second.
There's a motion.
Can I have a discussion?
Okay.
Can I have?
Well, hold on. Not yet. I was saying there's a motion and a second to approve the item as it is now. Councilmember Larson.
Discussion. When did the city establish its MWBE program?
1983.
I'm sorry?
1983.
83. I'm sorry. I'm new on the board. 83. These studies that are done cover a period of time, 10 years usually? Is that what?
It ranges. It could be 10, 15.
They will go back. When we commission, if we commission it this year, they will go back to 91 or 2001.
Possibly, yes.
15, something. Because part of the real question that I'm having with this is we have an excellent program. Congratulations to you. We just passed a resolution to upgrade what we're doing and clearly moving forward on a variety of fronts. You look at the comparative chart, the things that we can do with or without the study, and there are a number of things there that we're able to address. And I guess as I'm thinking about spending $275,000 to $350,000 on this at this point in time, with our budgets that we're looking at and the concerns that we have, in trying to understand what you as a staff are doing to move these projects forward, this program forward over this period of time. And really what this is going to be in a large extent is an evaluation of what you guys have been doing for the last 10 years to move the city in the direction that we want it to go. And I'm actually fairly proud of what you guys have been able to accomplish as my short term on the board, to see the amount of commitment that we're making on these contracts and percentages and citizen participation and a variety of things. So what I'm struggling with right now, in a sense, is this one, can we do this without a study? And you apparently don't think we can. Your committee, the Citizens Committee, does not think we can. Seems to think we have to have that to get this done. I'm looking back, and in the short term that I've been on the board, looking at the progress that you're making and thinking of the other things that we can do and looking at the budget as a whole, and I'm trying to understand whether we really need this at this point in time. And I guess what I'm trying to understand is the urgency of undertaking this study at this point in time with the staff and the commitment that we're making as a city, what we expect to have out of this study, which comes in a year, 18 months, whatever it takes to complete it, and with the roadmap that it will provide us that we don't already have in our own capacity right now to undertake, and a commitment, obviously, by council to execute. And I'm just, when we look at $300,000, I think of all kinds of things I'd like to spend money on. I just want to make sure that that's value rendered when we seem to be moving in a very positive way in this city to address these issues. So if you could please help me, maybe my council members can also help me, which I'm sure they're ready to do, is explain the timeliness of this. I understand it was brought up once before and tabled or postponed. I did read that, I think, in the minutes. So maybe we can understand why now.
I will. I know Councilmember Adams and Bessie had their hand raised. I don't know. Well, hold on a second. Let me, Mr. City Manager, will you address the why now question?
Well, first of all, you know, the staff has worked hard to implement as many of the recommendations from other studies, and in fact, you can see in that report, in many areas, we've actually done more than what we were suggested that we would do a few years back. That was a concern that council had to point at that time was, well, why can't we just save the money and do it with what we have? I think there's what's happened since then is that the advisory committee has been very strongly in favor of doing this study. I've been attending the meetings. There are a couple things. One is that, you know, we've set an internal goal this council has of 10% as a minimum, and then we look at individual projects to see when especially in informal construction, where we can make a higher amount. What we don't have is, without the study would give us aspirational goals. So if you look at the other communities, they go through and they define based on utilization in the different areas, construction, services, etc., what those goals can be, aspirational goals, both for women and for minorities. And you know, it's possible that it might be a little bit lower in some area, but it's more likely based on other cities that they'll set aspirational goals based on utilization, which are defendable, according to the attorney, defendable if someone challenges us on what that goal is based on utilization at a higher rate. And without the study, we don't have that kind of data or defensible data for that. And I think the other thing is just it gives us a complete outside independent, if you get a good consultant, objective review of everything we do and what the best practices are out there in the industry.
I'm sorry, do we need this for legal reasons then for our implementation of our program?
No, if we raise the goals higher.
If we raise.
Yeah.
The past almost 10 years, some of us have been cheerleaders for this. And I don't even like to think of it as being a cheerleader. I think an advocate for it. As you already heard earlier, we're behind when it comes to other cities in North Carolina compared to our size or even smaller or even larger. It's hard for me to sit here and again, not understand why, you know, and you have to look at it from the context of where I sit. And yes, my age and history. It always seems like we got to prove a little bit more, or just a little bit more. We got to advocate, we got to argue, we got to discuss, we got to present the data, the numbers. We do that, and we still have to prove a little bit more as to why. Our city decided they wanted to do a poverty thought plan, the mayor, the others. Again, it goes back about talking about it versus actually being about it and doing something. You know, I was one of the first that said, you know, I don't need another study, but, you know, we always have plans and things, and sometimes we have to have these studies in order for us to move forward as leaders of this city. Recently, our country passed a tax bill that was filled with all kinds of things. But most of those things, you know, right, wrong, and different, I can't discern for me personally how much it's going to be advantageous to me and people that look like me and people that are the least of us. They have in there called opportunity zones, and the Journal did the story on how Forsyth County and Winston-Salem I sent airplanes in like everybody else to have opportunity zones. Well, opportunity zones are connected to this tax plan that was passed. It allows cities to designate based on census tracts low-income areas that they can do economic development and things. And it surprised me, Mr. Garrity, when I saw that ours was Whitaker Park, for example, Whitaker Park, Smith Reynolds, and the Innovation Quarter. Based on this, and if there are not contiguous census areas to these areas, then these folks or the city, we can then determine and make them so they can get the tax credits for the jobs and the economic development. That's changing the rules as we go. On television or Facebook, there might have been a commercial on there that showed opportunity, how it works in America. If you start off with parents, great jobs, college graduates, whatever, and I start out with none of that, but I got great parents, no college degree, no high school diploma, but they work hard every day, there's always going to be this gap. And unless we make people and be intentional to close it, it'll never be closed. You asked, why now? If not now, when? That's what my folk, we used to hearing that. If not now, when? I will continue to fight for this disparity study. I'm going to make it part of my legacy in this town, whether I'm on this council now or ever, that until we are intentional about making life better for the least of us, and it always seems to center around, and I'm taking a little personal, emotional now, that there are others in our community in this world that just can't see that why wouldn't we want others to just have an opportunity? Maybe they won't bid on some fire trucks because we don't make automobiles. We work in automobile factories. But at least give us the opportunity. That's all this is about. You see the economics of Durham? Winston used to be one of the largest cities in the state. But we like to stay stuck on the past and how we do things and who run things in this town. When Bill Bell and others decided we're going to step out and we're going to make Durham better. We're going to do better. Durham is now a benchmark, and when I go to conferences, they talk about Durham. Raleigh, same thing. Charlotte, same thing. Greensboro took the plunge before we did, and we were talking about it before all of them. And they've moved on. I think it's apparent, and I think it's the responsibility of this council to move on this disparity study and let whatever issues that we have been shown, let the study help us to be better and do better, but not just the city, but for certain demographics of this city. That's where I am, Chair.
Councilor Best.
I'd like to see this council spend its time looking at ways we can improve our service and program delivery, especially to disadvantaged areas. I think, as a matter of fact, I think it's a good question, is it worth the investment at this time? But I think part of the answer is that if you look at our meetings, we have begun to spend a disproportionate amount of our time and our staff's time arguing over whether individual contracts meet the goals we've set, and if not, why not? I think that this is a way to get us past that, make whatever changes we need to make to our program to ensure that we have a contracting process and rules that take advantage of historically disadvantaged businesses to the greatest extent actually feasible in our community, and get us out of the business of arguing every month about whether contract A or contract B meets the standards, and it'll be worth it in the long run to do that. So that's another reason why I support actually doing the study, getting it done, and implementing the results.
And I'd say just to add closing a few comments from thinking about the disparity study. When we think about the dollar amounts to invest in this disparity study, it is a large dollar amount. But if we take the advisement of where funds can be used, these are not funds that can be that would normally be used to fill any budget gap. So if we're faced with a budget challenge, the funds that we would use to potentially use to do this would not be funds that we would utilize to address an operational challenge. And so this would not pull away funds from an operational budget in order to accomplish the task of doing a disparity study. And it does get to the point that I think Councilmember Bessie makes in the sense of some of the conversations we have around some contracts comes to the question that Councilmember Clark always asks is there anybody out there that actually does this work? From a disparity study, it gives us a sense, well, no, there's nobody that makes silver spoons who are minorities, but there are some folks who creates X, Y, and Z that are minority-owned or women-owned businesses in our communities that are not getting a shot at the contract that exists there, and poses opportunities and ways for us to ensure that our contracting is open to folks to be able to be a part of what we're doing. And to the point of, again, that why now conversation or why even continue to move forward, since we have so much good stuff happening within our programs, which I would agree we are, I think, moving in the right direction. But many of the changes that have happened to the program have happened relatively recently in terms of staffing, offices being developed, other people being put in place. And so for some looking at it right now and say, hey, you all are doing really, really good in terms of which direction in the year-over-year improvements to where we're going. But that has come after a lot of conversation and a lot of things that have happened around it. And I use it this way. If you've never invited me over to eat and you start to your house for dinner and you invite me over, just because you cook me a meal this week doesn't mean it's your best meal. So it doesn't mean that just because we're starting to do some things better, it doesn't mean that we're doing the best that we possibly can. And I think this disparity study gives us the opportunity to say, Winston-Salem, we're going to put our best foot forward to ensure that everybody has a seat, everybody who wants, and let's be clear, everybody who wants to has a seat at the table. So with that said, any other comments, questions, or concerns? Thank you. There is a motion and the votes, 3 in favor, 1 abstaining.
Thank you.
All right. With that stated, that is all of the items on our agenda for today. I will make this statement, and it's something that's been on me in terms of something that we could potentially make time in one of these committee meeting settings. Because of some of the conversations that we have, I actually think it would be greatly beneficial to members of not only this committee but this council to truly have some engagement around equity and diversity training-wise. And I don't know how that could be presented to us in some ways, but we all sit at this table from different perspectives and different life experiences. And for us, when we engage fully in some of these conversations, I think it's helpful for us to be able to get that perspective so that we can be well formed to engage on some of these things. Everybody might not want to do it, but I think it's personally beneficial. And I don't know how we could allow for something like that.
We'll come up with some ideas for the council.
Okay. All right. With that said, if there's nothing else, Public Works will
Public
start.
Works will begin at 6:05, please. 6:05.
All right. We're adjourned.
Oh.